Welcome to More Than Medicine, the podcast from Zeam Health. This show explores how integrated psychiatry, primary care, and aesthetics come together to support the whole person, not just isolated symptoms. Each episode is grounded in clinical insight, real-world care, and the latest research, helping you better understand your health and the options available to you. Whether you're navigating mental health, managing a chronic condition, or thinking about preventive or aesthetic care, this is where medicine connects. Let's get started.
Depression can make you feel stuck. Not just emotionally, but mentally. Like your thoughts keep looping in the same patterns, no matter what you try. And for a lot of people, that's exactly what happens. They try medication after medication, wait weeks for results, deal with side effects, and still feel like nothing is shifting. At some point, the question changes. It's no longer, "Why can't I push through this?" It becomes, "What's happening in my brain? And how do we actually change it?" That's where ketamine therapy enters the picture. Because it doesn't work like traditional antidepressants. It works on a completely different system. And in many cases, it helps the brain do something it hasn't been able to do in a long time. Change. Why traditional treatments fall short. Depression is common, but treatment-resistant depression, that's where things get difficult. Millions of people fall into this category, meaning they've tried at least 2 antidepressants, without meaningful improvement. Most of those medications target serotonin, and they can help, but they're slow. Sometimes it takes weeks, just to find out if they're going to work at all. Meanwhile, the brain is still stuck in the same patterns. Over time, those patterns become rigid. The circuits responsible for mood, decision-making, and emotional regulation start reinforcing the same negative loops. It's like the brain gets locked into a prediction. This is how things are, and this is how they'll stay. And when that flexibility is gone, it doesn't matter how motivated someone is. They feel stuck. What ketamine does differently. Ketamine takes a completely different approach. Instead of targeting serotonin, it works through glutamate, which is the brain's main excitatory system. And that shift changes everything. Because ketamine doesn't just try to adjust mood chemicals, it interrupts the patterns themselves. In clinical studies, people who hadn't responded to anything else started showing improvement, sometimes within hours. That speed is what caught researchers' attention, because it suggested something deeper was happening. Not just symptom management, but actual change in how the brain functions. The science of new pathways. Here's where it gets really interesting. During a ketamine infusion, certain receptors in the brain, called NMDA receptors, temporarily quiet down. That shift causes a cascade effect. Glutamate levels rise. Other receptors activate. And the brain releases something called BDNF. BDNF is often described as a growth factor for the brain. It helps neurons connect, adapt, and form new pathways. This creates what researchers call a plasticity window, a period of time where the brain becomes more flexible, more open to change, more capable of breaking out of old patterns and forming new ones. What happens in the brain? Imaging studies give us a clearer picture. In one study, people with treatment-resistant depression were scanned before ketamine, and then again 24 hours later. The results showed measurable changes in areas tied to emotion and mood, not subtle changes, real, structural shifts that matched improvements in how people actually felt. Another study looked at connectivity between brain regions. What they found was powerful. Ketamine increased communication between areas responsible for emotional regulation and areas responsible for higher-level thinking. And the people who started with the weakest connections often showed the biggest improvements, which lines up with what many patients describe. That feeling of, my thoughts aren't as rigid. I can see things differently. I'm not stuck in the same loop. That's not just subjective. That's the brain rewiring. Why therapy matters after ketamine. But here's the key point. That plasticity window doesn't last forever. It opens and then gradually closes. So what happens during that window matters. There was a study where participants did a simple positive association exercise after ketamine. Those who engaged in that process held on to their improvements longer, sometimes for months. That tells us something important. Ketamine creates the opportunity, but what you do with that opportunity shapes the outcome. This is why therapy is so important, because when the brain becomes more flexible, you finally have space to question old beliefs, to reframe experiences, to build new patterns. And with the right guidance, those changes can stick. Why medical supervision matters. Ketamine is powerful, and because of that, it needs to be handled carefully. There can be side effects, changes in blood pressure, dissociation, and there's also potential for misuse. That's why medical supervision is critical. In a clinical setting, patients are screened properly, sessions are monitored, dosing is controlled, and support continues after treatment. That structure is what makes the experience safe, and what makes the outcomes more consistent. Ketamine therapy isn't just about feeling better quickly. It's about giving the brain a chance to do something different, to step out of rigid patterns and begin forming new ones. But it works best when it's part of a bigger plan, one that includes therapy, ongoing support, and careful clinical guidance. At Zeam Health and Wellness, that's exactly how we approach it. We combine science, structure, and personalized care. So patients aren't just experiencing change, they're able to sustain it. If you're exploring ketamine therapy and want a team that walks with you through the entire process, you can reach out to us anytime. And in our next episode, we're going to compare two powerful treatment options: TMS versus traditional depression treatment. Which one works better for long-term relief? And how do clinicians decide between them? We'll break that down next.
Thanks for listening to More Than Medicine. If today's episode sparked questions about your own health or helped you understand your options more clearly, you're not alone. At Zeam Health, we provide integrated psychiatry, primary care, and aesthetic services designed to support your long-term well-being. To learn more or schedule a visit, head to zeamhealth.com. We'll be back soon with another conversation focused on care that goes beyond the surface.